Welcome to the Food Revolution Summit, where we explore how you can heal your body and your world with food. Our next interview that you're about to watch is with our guest, Dr. Uma Naidoo. Uma Naidoo, MD, is a pioneer in a field you may have never heard of. It's called nutritional psychiatry. It's a new medical specialty leveraging the fact that food influences mood. A board-certified Harvard-trained psychiatrist, an award-winning professional chef, and a nutrition biologist, Dr. Naidoo teaches at Harvard Medical School and directs the Department of Nutritional and Metabolic Psychiatry at Massachusetts General Hospital. Dr. Naidoo has appeared on Live with Kelly and Ryan, The Today Show, and many other programs, sharing the cutting-edge science of how a sound diet can help treat and prevent ADHD, anxiety, depression, OCD, and other psychological and cognitive health issues. She is the international best-selling author of the blockbuster book, This Is Your Brain on Food, which has been published in 18 languages and 22 countries. In the interview you're about to watch, we're going to be talking with Dr. Naidoo about how what you eat affects your brain and your mood. Uma, great to be with you.
Thanks so much, Ocean. Really appreciate the invitation.
I want to talk with you today a lot about mental health. Can you tell us a little bit about the mental health, the status of the mental health epidemic in our society right now? And also that it's more pervasive than a lot of us realize because so many people are ashamed.
It's so true, and it's such a great question because for some reason, for reasons I think we do understand well, the pandemic really highlighted the mental health crisis. And we know from research and statistics that coming out of the pandemic, things like anxiety and depression have really increased even more and across demographics. I happen to think that in some ways, by highlighting the mental health crisis, it's brought it to the attention of more people. And in some ways, I'm hoping that will help people feel less ashamed to seek the help that they need. But I think that one of the factors, including the way that COVID unfolded, people were isolated, separated from family, friends, loved ones, working remotely. The lack of connection really impacted people. And a study done at Mass Journal on neuroimaging showed that individuals who didn't have a COVID infection, Ocean, actually showed inflammation in the brain. And what that spoke to was the fact that maybe the isolation and the stress of the pandemic also had an impact. Now we know, and we've talked before about how inflammation in the brain impacts our mental well-being as well. So I think there were so many factors, including how we eat, of course.
So for somebody who is struggling with a mental health challenge, depression, anxiety, ADHD, so many other conditions that can show up, what do you want to say to them to help them have self-love and also get support?
The first thing I'd want to say is that it's nothing to be ashamed about because so many other people are feeling this way today. And that the first thing as well is that food can be a really powerful tool to help lower your symptoms just by starting to eat healthier. As you wait to, say, see a practitioner, ask your friends and family for help. Reach out to a local center. Don't suffer alone. And while you're waiting to do that, try a few other things like with anxiety, even a mindfulness technique, a breathwork exercise, and then just starting to maybe tweak your diet a little bit can be very powerful just to help calm your mind.
What are the foods that are causal in increasing likelihood of mental health problems?
We know that sugar causes problems with type 2 diabetes, insulin resistance, and, an increasing and expanding waistline. But people don't often associate sugar, and by that I really mean the refined and added sugars, because we want to be able to eat fruit. But these types of sugar actually affect the brain. So we want to be careful about foods that have high fructose corn syrup, a lot of savory foods that have these added sugars like ketchup, store-bought pasta sauce, even salad dressings. That's one big category. Another one is the refined oils, the processed, ultra-processed oils. We want to stick rather with, avocado oil or olive oil. Another big category is the fried foods because they are usually fried in unhealthy oils, and we know that this impacts our overall health. Artificial sweetness is another one. So those are some of the big categories that I want people to be more wary of when thinking about their mental well-being.
How does it work at a biochemical level that these compounds are impacting the brain?
One simple example: let's take foods from a fast food restaurant. They are usually fried in more economical or cheaper oils, and they're deep fried. So not only are you having something that's relatively unhealthy, the oil that is being used is pro-inflammatory. So you're eating the food, your process of digestion begins. We know that there are trillions of microbes in the gut microbiome. And these microbes start to break down the food that we eat. But when they see unhealthy foods, foods that have sugar, by the way, a lot of fast food french fries have added sugar, and research and development has shown that that makes these hyperpalatable. So we want to eat more. So the bad microbes love this. They love to eat these unhealthy foods, and they start to eat the foods, and the breakdown products of those foods are more toxic to the gut environment. They form things like toxic lipopolysaccharides that damages the single cell lining of the gut. And over time, they start to pierce the gut and create things like a leaky gut or intestinal permeability. So that's one of the ways that something unhealthy on a consistent basis, if that's your go-to food, followed by the dessert and treats and things like that, that you start to develop leaky gut. The inflammation in the gut leads to inflammation in the brain because we know that the gut and brain are connected. They're sort of the same ecosystem. So that's one of the ways that we understand it to be problematic for mental well-being.
Anxiety and depression on one level seem like opposites. A person has no energy or motivation versus someone is hyper stressed.
Feeling very stressed, right?
But they often go together. How does that work?
It's so interesting. Even some of the psychotropic medications used to treat them target the same things. What I find clinically, Ocean, is that it's often hard to tell which symptom someone has more of. Someone may present with severe anxiety, problem sleeping, difficulty getting out of bed, but also be extremely anxious when you ask them more questions. Like what may be keeping them in bed is such fear of even getting their day started. So I completely agree. They tend to run together. In a book that I've written called Calm Your Mind with Food, I actually speak about them in unison because people themselves find it hard to tease apart. But I also want to stress that the interventions don't have to be only medication. There's so many things that we can do that are non-medication based to help people lower their stress and, in fact, improve their mood as well.
Like what?
So starting off with, I love to start with food is my favorite thing to talk about, but I'd love to mention things like learning when you're not having severe anxiety, to learn a breathing technique. So learn a breathwork exercise that you can get used to, that you can practice even when you're taking a walk. Because when you feel anxious, you can pull that out of your back pocket and say, I'm going to try this breathwork exercise to calm myself down. Say I have an important interview or a job something that's making me anxious. Another one is finding an exercise, a form of movement that you enjoy. Because I really want people to be able to do it in a way that it becomes part of their lifestyle. So it's not you have to do X number of minutes and do this. It's finding something you love to do because it's going to be good for your body. A really simple one, 10 minutes in outdoor time. That gets us 80% of our vitamin D. This is before you put on sunblock or your sunscreen. And vitamin D helps lower anxiety and improves mood. So that's an easy one. And then, of course, we go to the foods and the foods that you want to start to include in your diet. And I want to mention some things that are slightly different, things like ashwagandha, which have really been more in the Ayurvedic realm, but now really touching into the supplement realm for us. because there are good studies showing that they help lower anxiety. But you can also start with, some of my favorite things, leafy greens, rich in folate, rich in so many vitamins and minerals that help you with stabilizing your mood and also calming your mind. So those are just a couple of things to get started with. And my other favorite is fiber, which, as you know, comes from our plant-rich foods. That's where you get the sources of fiber, and fiber-rich foods break down very much more slowly in the body. And by doing so, we don't have the sugar rush or the sugar high when we eat an ice cream or a donut. And that actually helps calm you because your blood sugar is more stable, more on an even keel, and you just feel better.
Thank you. Okay, I want to go over these things a little bit more slowly and deeply here because I think they're all very important. So the first thing you just talked about was breath. And I'm just wondering if you can introduce us to a simple breathing exercise that we could do, even right now, just to have a practice for something that actually can have real benefit.
Sure. So, they would just teach me to meditate and learn sort of breath work. And it's a very simple thing. It's focus on, as a child, focus on something positive, some positive activity you want to do, something that you're looking forward to. Close your eyes, make sure that you're seated in a comfortable position, and just start to breathe. But start with a really big, deep breath, because there's something about taking that big inhalation and letting it go. Sometimes you just let go of something that, maybe it's in your shoulders or some part of your body that you're holding in that tension. And believe it or not, I actually use that sometimes when I'm traveling. I use it all the time. And then there are more, there are things like which I wouldn't necessarily feel comfortable doing the demo of because I'm not an expert, but things like boxed breathing. And then, alternate nostril breathing, which I think people can find, not only videos that teach them how to do it, but it's easy to follow. So it's not hard. But I often use that deep breath technique because for me, it takes me out of a moment when I'm feeling a lot of angst.
I think it's interesting that when we're in a state of distress, like say there's a tiger that's about to eat you, you don't want that tiger to notice you.
Yes.
So your breathing is going to get very shallow and very quiet. And there's just this tendency, the more stressed we are, the shallower and tighter our breath gets. And so to take an intentional deep breath is kind of like repatterning the nervous system. This is how I see it anyway, to say, I'm safe. And it contradicts all of the stress mechanisms that get everything more constricted, to say, we're actually opening and expanding here. And somehow it starts to create a positive feedback loop towards a more spacious experience of life.
I like how you explain that because so many things happen with that response of seeing a tiger in your midst or in the horizon. But part of what you're also saying is we kind of breaking that circuit and we are reprogramming ourselves to realize that there's a way to take that deep breath and feel better. And, there's something about that exhalation for me that just lets go of something. Not always, doesn't always work. It's not foolproof, but it will often just help me get out of a tough moment.
Yeah, thank you. Okay, and then you talked about sun exposure and getting outdoors. And I think probably, especially in the morning, is ideal.
Especially in the morning, because just the sunlight reaching your retina, reaching your eyes also helps us regulate our circadian rhythm, which is basically, how our internal body clock. So I like to, before I apply my sunblock or sunscreen, spend time, even on a balcony or if I'm traveling or be outdoors as part of my walk because I know that I'm absorbing that vitamin D, which I need and which I know is good for my mood. It's going to help me feel less stressed. So these are just simple things any one of us can do.
You talked about ashwagandha and you said there's obviously other compounds too that are uniquely potent and proven in their efficacy for supporting people with mental health. Tell us what ashwagandha is and what the studies say about it.
Ashwagandha is an herb that's been used for eons in Ayurvedic practice, but it's now really sort of merged with being in the Western world. And I love the fact that it's available as a supplement because it's actually really bitter tasting. There've been a good amount of work done on using it for anxiety. And I think that, speaking to your practitioner, finding out the best dose that you need, that's important. But it provides an alternative. One of my favorite things are herbs and spices because they're sugar free, calorie free, they're easy to get, and they flavor up our food. But why not, eat delicious, healthy food and add in the spices for those extra benefits, like the antioxidant and anti-inflammatory properties. This is where things like turmeric with a pinch of black pepper come in. This is where the luteolin from things like fresh mint come in. So adding these in can be extremely important and helpful. Or L-theanine and EGCG from green tea can be very calming and soothing for people while giving them more energy and focus. So it's a great way to start to take a different approach to what we're eating, how we're thinking about it.
Tell us about saffron.
Love saffron. So saffron is one of my favorites. And while I love cooking with it, we only use a few strands, and it's very expensive to buy. The studies on saffron actually looked at using a supplement form of saffron to get the dose needed. And it showed a significant amount of help with lowering levels of depression. So it helps mood. And I say to people that, if you're going to use saffron, by all means cook with it, but you're not going to get enough in your food. So speak to your doctor about getting a supplemental form because that actually has a good amount of evidence behind it.
You talked about leafy greens and their benefits for brain health. Tell us about that.
So leafy greens, the greener the better. Vitamin B9 or folate, several decades ago, research was done at Harvard showing that low folate is associated with a low mood. Now, you can, take a folate supplement, which is folic acid, but you can also eat lots of leafy greens, which are a good idea anyway. You're getting tons of other vitamins and minerals, but you're also getting the fiber. So just adding that into your daily diet, adding something to, say, a tofu scramble, adding it to your salads, adding it as a side for your dinner, all of this becomes super important and easy to do.
Yeah. And then fiber. You talked about fiber and its importance. Tell us more about fiber and why it matters to gut health and to brain health.
So fiber is often something that in the United States we tend to not eat enough of. This is because we tend to focus a lot on protein. And while protein is an important nutrient to have in our bodies, we are not generally lacking protein. It's usually fiber that we're not eating enough of. Fiber is something that you cannot get from animal or seafood proteins. It's entirely plant-based. So it's something you get from vegetables, fruit, beans, nuts, seeds, legumes, and the healthy whole grains. So we want to be consuming it in a way, A, because we are lacking fiber in our diet, but B, because fiber actually helps, the way that I'd like to explain is if you're eating vegetables, they break down more slowly in your body. If you're eating an apple, it breaks down more slowly in your body compared to a donut, which you finish in 3 seconds. So not only are you chewing the food, it's being digested, it's being broken down by those microbes. The breakdown products from fiber-rich foods are very helpful to the gut. They're helpful to the gut microbes. As the gut microbes break down these products, they take the plant polyphenols from these different foods, say the carotenoids from carrots or the anthocyanins from blueberries, and they interact with them. These actually can be very helpful to things like the neurotransmitters, which also live in that environment of the gut.
I want to bring in the human dimension of this a little bit. Can you tell us the story of a patient? You obviously don't have to use their actual name, but tell us the story of a patient you've worked with who was dealing with mental health challenges and had all of the self-esteem issues that can often accompany that. Maybe they shifted their diet or lifestyle and they felt better. I'd just love to hear about that journey a little bit, if you can bring that to life for us.
Very early on in my career, and it was a very eye-opening moment for me. I was still learning about prescribing medications, and I had a patient who, I was a timid young doctor, and had a patient come in and yell at me. And I noticed, I had met him about 2 weeks prior and initiated medication based on a very careful evaluation. The medication was Prozac, which is a selective serotonin reuptake inhibitor, which many people know. When I first evaluated him, already I could see, not only from the statistics which I recorded in the medical chart, but I could see that he was overweight. He was struggling a little bit with weight. And the way that he dressed and the way that he kind of walked in the room, I recall that. But he came in and booked an early appointment with me, earlier than he needed to see me, saying that, he had read about the side effects and he was very upset because I caused him to gain weight. And of course, I knew technically that wasn't the case. But he also had this massive cup of coffee in his hand, and it was about 20 ounces. So I sat him down. I said, "Well, you came to see me. Let's take a deep breath and let's talk. Why not tell me what you put in your coffee?" And I think instinctually, I was starting at that time to put together the fact that we were not asking people what they were eating when we were writing these prescriptions for different medications, which had many side effects. And he started to tell me what it was. It was more than a quarter cup of processed creamer and 8 teaspoons of sugar. And when I opened the laptop and I started explaining to him what those calories meant, he realized the number of empty calories he was consuming before he even ate his breakfast. And this was very empowering for him. He sat up straight in the chair. He said, "That's something I can change. Can you show me what I need to do? Because I still eat breakfast after that. Can I maybe eat a healthier breakfast?" So from being really angry and upset and feeling humiliated because obviously the weight had been bothering him, but he now was able to assign it to the medication, by understanding there was a reason and there was at least one thing he could change. So we tweaked his diet over time slowly. He did so much better. He, over time, lost weight. We didn't need to increase the dose of the medication. We had a really good therapeutic relationship. He drank a healthier version of coffee. And he did so much better. And he actually, I have to say, even stood taller. He felt more confident. He lost a few pounds, actually, a lot more over time. But it was a very big change that really was a blessing for me because I saw his mental health journey come alive and him feel so much better.
Thank you. Is there a strong relationship between excess weight and mental health challenges? And if so, how does excess fat in the body affect our brain and mental health?
More and more these days, we are understanding that mental health and metabolic health are connected. And in the United States, we know from research that about 4/5 of the country, about 80% of individuals have some impairment in their metabolic health. So it is hugely important. In part, I think that one of the drivers is what we're eating. You see, when we have excess weight or we have these problems, it could be related to diet and other things. I happen to think diet is one of the biggest drivers, but it pushes for inflammation in the body. And when our body's inflamed, when our gut is inflamed, it leads to neuroinflammation. It starts a whole vicious cycle of almost us having to work uphill to feel better emotionally. So I think that it's important for people to reset from whatever point they're at. I don't believe that there's a perfect weight or a perfect height or a perfect look, but are we eating foods that are healthier for our bodies? Are we addressing these questions with our doctors? Are we finding time for movement of our body, for mindfulness as well? These are lifestyle factors which make a difference to how we feel. And I don't think it's just one thing versus another. I think it's really a holistic and integrated approach.
How important are social ties to mental health? And relatedly, is there particular benefit to creating social ties around healthy habits?
So social ties are hugely important in mental health. Not only just having a sense of community, being able to reach out to people for help. I mentioned when we spoke a study done looking at the MRI of individuals, brain imaging studies of individuals who had not had a COVID-19 infection. But these individuals had inflammation in the brain. And we felt, and looking at it, the researchers felt that it was related to that isolation, being separated from other humans, and what happens. So this becomes important in our understanding of having individuals, not only that you can reach out to, but form your community support system. Sometimes a family, friends, sometimes it's your neighborhood, sometimes it's just one person. But I think this becomes important in being able to not feel isolated and alone, and being able to really get the help that you need. Sometimes it's verifying your and validating your experience by finding out what someone else is going through, a shared experience, seeing how you can help one another. But these are extremely important.
Yeah. I also find that fellowship around food,
Yes.
especially healthy food,
Yes.
can be, because, it can cut both ways, right? A lot of us are dragged down by our relationships, right?
That's true.
We tend to
That's
be
true.
more like the people we hang out with. So
This is
that
true.
can cut in negative ways, but it can
Right.
also be positive if you surround yourself with people who influence you in good ways, and you
Yes.
can also influence them in good ways.
It's so true because I often experience this when I'm trying to tweak and design a nutritional psychiatry plan, say for someone with anxiety. And it might be the mom in the family or parent or one person in the family. And often it's an uphill battle because everyone else is eating some unhealthy foods and reaching for the cookies and ice cream at dinner when in fact this person is struggling to rework. It doesn't always work for them to influence everyone.
Right.
But it has at times worked because the individuals, certainly a case I'm thinking of, will start to bring in healthy foods and start to show preparing healthy foods and start to prove that the meal can be super delicious, something that they hadn't even thought about and can reflect through how they're behaving and how their life is evolving, that they're feeling better. And it starts to influence those around them. But it doesn't always work. Often it's an uphill struggle for people.
I'm thinking also about how, at least for me, like people that I exercise with,
Yeah.
play racquetball with, or work out at the
it's
gym
more
with,
fun. It's
we
more
have regular routines. And it actually, I work out more and play racquetball more because I have friends who like to do that with me.
Correct.
So that's that. And
It's a
same
sense
with
of
food,
fun
right?
and community.
Like if I
Yes.
actually prepare a nicer dinner if I'm feeding somebody else, than if
Right.
I'm just sitting
Then
for
if I'm
myself.
preparing for myself.
Yeah.
So true. I find
Yeah.
the same thing.
So we can leverage positive social connection in ways that support healthy habits too.
They can support healthy habits and reinforce them. Because I don't know about you, but I'm more likely to go work out if I have a friend with me.
Right.
Because I have someone to chat with. We can each do whatever we're doing. Then we have, we can go for even a short walk another time. But it's having companionship and feeling, humans are social beings. So this really fits in with the ethos of who we are.
Yeah. I want to talk a little bit about brain fog.
Yeah.
A lot of people feel like, they can't remember names like they used to or like they want to.
Right.
They don't track conversations all the way. Their brain gets tired. It just gets blurry. And is this something to be concerned about? What causes brain fog? And is there something to do about it?
So I definitely think that there's an intervention through food as well as other things. But a lot of people are experiencing this either as part of sort of long COVID or having struggles with it around just how they're dealing with having gone through COVID. Maybe they didn't have the actual infection or they had a mild version. And what I'm finding is just tweaking certain things can be helpful in starting to step back from that. One thing is looking at the overall diet. And are we adding in, or have we added, especially during COVID, too many processed, packaged, ultra processed foods that are pretty much unhealthy for us? But then it's also, which I love to do, is adding in nutrients that actually help brain fog. And luteolin is an antioxidant that actually has been shown to help brain fog. And it's found in things like, cherry peppers. It's found in things like Mexican oregano, parsley, thyme, and mint. So these are things that, and several others, but these are things you can actually add, like a mint tea is something I ask all of my patients to have, especially if they're having that little bit of fogginess in the afternoon and they're trying to get through their workday or they're adjusting to something. Have like a fresh mint tea or mint tea and then add fresh mint if you have it available. But it's very uplifting and it helps people focus, and by doing it consistently, it helps them over time. Because I think it's something we're all struggling with.
Luteolin.
Yes, luteolin. Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
Interesting. You said the first ingredient you mentioned, or food you mentioned, you said cherry peppers?
Yes. So different types of peppers, different colored.
Oh, different colors.
Different colors.
Okay,
of peppers,
got it.
yeah.
Okay. Now let's talk a bit about Alzheimer's. When we think about our brains, the thing most of us are the most scared of is losing our ability to think and process and even know who we are.
Yeah.
Can you talk a little bit about the human dimension of Alzheimer's and what causes it?
Alzheimer's is one of the most researched conditions in the world. And I think that what I see as a clinician and through just being a clinical scientist is the impact that it has not only on the individual and their mind, but the impact it has on families, on all generations of the family. I think that caregivers and caretakers can be very stressed and very burnt out by caretaking a loved one who may be struggling with Alzheimer's. One of the things that I uncovered and learned in my journey in nutritional psychiatry was the fact that many of us at any age of life, right, might be walking around with some subtle changes in our brain, and nothing may happen. We may go through life with these cells remaining nascent and live to a healthy older age. But depending on what we do, our stress levels, anxiety, but also how we're eating, our lifestyle, um, these cells can actually change toward developing cognitive problems and even things like Alzheimer's. The trick being that if there's inflammation, we have the ability to fend that off by changing significantly what we eat. Food becomes a very powerful tool in this conversation, because if you are starting to tweak how you're eating, that can actually lower inflammation, and you may not realize that you're fending off what could have been a devastating diagnosis. So I think there are aspects and stages of Alzheimer's where food is important, but it may not be able to help reverse or change anything. But certainly early on, if you're noticing or concerned yourself about longevity, your brain health, just tweaking what you eat in terms of a healthy direction. I'm not a proponent of the eat this, not that mentality. I think healthy tweaks along a continuum are what people need.
Is hydration important to brain health?
Hydration is extremely important. That is a great question. Studies have looked at dehydration in several different ways. For one thing, clinically, when individuals are dehydrated, they can actually even present with panic. So, having people just hydrate adequately throughout the day with just a plain tea or just simply water is one of the best things to tell them to really fend off bouts of anxiety and panic. But dehydration has also been linked to mood and depression. So a simple thing is a sustainable water bottle and making sure that you're sipping on, just filtered water throughout the day and getting it varies for many people, but making sure that you're adequately hydrated throughout the day is another very simple lifestyle tool that we can practice.
How much water should we be getting, and how can we know if we're dehydrated?
Sometimes people have hunger cravings. And because the hunger center and thirst center in the brain are so close, what I will often say to them is rather than reach for something unhealthy or vending machine, which you want to avoid, drink a cool glass of water as you as you're doing a great demo.
I'm trying to be on brand.
Yeah, exactly. So drinking water actually may offset those cravings, and you might be able to get your healthy meal in a little bit. So another tip around the amount of water we should drink is, many doctors will say 6 to 8 glasses a day, but it does vary for some people. Some people need a little bit more. Some people have other medical problems where they have to be a little bit more careful. But on average, I ask people to do about 6 to 8 glasses a day, unless they feel uncomfortable or develop something that they should be talking to their doctor about. But it's a good middle of the way range and sort of a guideline.
Should people look at their urine color for guidance on this?
They absolutely can. So we know that when the urine is really sort of more concentrated, more yellow or not clear, that we may not be consuming enough water. So that's an easy thing to do. But then the urine has other meanings, right? So I always want people to be in conversation with their clinicians or their doctors about it. But an easy way to see, like, haven't drank enough water, what is my urine looking like today, and make sure that I make up that for later in the day.
Unless if people take supplemental B vitamins, that can cause yellow urine.
That
That's nothing to do with dehydration.
That's right.
Yeah.
That's true.
What about caffeine?
What's really interesting, Ocean, is that caffeine is in coffee, but coffee itself comes from coffee beans, and coffee itself has a lot of really positive polyphenols that are good for us. People have written books, doctors have written books about the power of coffee in terms of even our liver health and our body health overall. I personally like coffee. I think that in mental health, I pay attention to how caffeine impacts levels of anxiety. I always say to my patients, if you drink a decaf coffee and you're starting to feel jittery, this is not an option for you. This is not something you want to be drinking. But if you enjoy your coffee, my guidance is to usually have it early in the day, have no more than 2 to 3 cups. And make sure it's a clean cup of coffee. And all I mean by that is not like my patient Bill with quarter cup of processed creamer and 8 teaspoons of sugar. Just clean up what you're putting in your coffee, because the coffee itself, if you're enjoying it, is relatively healthy, and don't have it too late in the day because it can impact your sleep.
And green tea, black tea, yerba mate.
Yes, so I love teas. And in fact, teas can be very calming for anxiety. Passion flower, lavender, mint teas can be very uplifting. Green tea can actually help people who really want to reach for that, fancy coffee in the afternoon with a lot of added stuff, which is not great for their brain. Actually, green tea is a great option because it helps people get a little burst of energy, helps their focus, and we know it contains EGCG and L-theanine, which are great and powerful antioxidants for the brain. So another great choice. And I love yerba mate if you have that too.
Yeah, yerba mate is very high in antioxidants, which is one thing we know. I don't think we have a ton of research on placebo-controlled studies of people
Right, but
taking
it
it
is.
and not, but we know that it's high in antioxidants, which is probably a good thing.
Definitely.
And anecdotally, a lot of people feel good. Is it, if people consume healthy forms of caffeine and it does work well for their body and it doesn't make them super jittery, is that going to increase life expectancy? Is that going to bring down risk of Alzheimer's in life?
It's interesting because I've read studies and looked at them in terms of coffee and focus, and the fact that caffeine can actually help focus in ADHD. But I think it's very case dependent, and I think clinically it's important to watch to see who takes it and that it doesn't impact everything else going on. Yes, so with coffee and Alzheimer's, as well as calorie restriction, these are some of the things that people have looked at, but again, guided by a clinician, because there's certain subtleties about that could be potentially helpful. I think that I always am guided by the fact that if someone enjoys it and they are not experiencing a negative symptom, it can be, we know what the research shows, but it can be just a powerful thing to incorporate.
Are you aware of any research on anorexia and dietary patterns and how to work with that specific condition?
So, eating disorders are one of the most life threatening conditions in mental health. And honestly, Ocean, people don't realize this. They think, well, oh, someone's struggling with some eating, maybe it's bulimia, maybe it's anorexia, but these are illnesses that can kill people. Someone who's severely restricting food can have such a loss of body mass, but also such severe electrolyte abnormalities that can cause a heart arrhythmia and they can die, and such severe levels of dehydration. So important to understand that in context. I think that it is challenging to heal one's relationship with food, but it is possible, and I've seen it happen. I think it requires a lot of support, speaking about community, as we've done, a supportive family, a supportive environment. One of the biggest things with conditions like anorexia or other eating disorders is examining what the dynamics are. Because sometimes the individual is actually responding to food through the perspective of control. And it may not be, although it's reflected in a relationship with the food, it's about other dynamics surrounding them. Sometimes it's body image, sometimes it's relationship with the parent, sometimes it's severe anxiety related to, and other conditions related to the environment. So very important to look at that and, undergo treatment that's comprehensive, that helps rehabilitate the way that they're eating and that relationship with food.
What about sleep? Can you talk about the role of sleep in mental health?
Sleep is one of the things that's most overlooked in terms of not realizing how impactful it is for mental well-being. Not only can poor sleep affect our circadian rhythms, affect our level of fatigue, affect our alertness, our ability to focus, our concentration, we know that a very important mechanism happens when we're resting. Our cells actually kind of rehabilitate themselves. And this is an important aspect to allow ourselves to sleep and to rest. When our body is resting, these good things happen. And when we cut back on our sleep, or we have choppy sleep, or we have disrupted sleep, we often don't realize that we don't feel that good. And that definitely impacts our mental health. In certain conditions like bipolar disorder, sleep can actually precipitate an episode of mania or manic behavior because the person is so lacking in sleep. And often, when in treatment, just having that person be able to rest and sleep can go a long way to stabilizing some of the condition as well as doing other things. So, it can be a very sentinel sign in mental illness.
If somebody is struggling with sleep, what are the top pillars of helping bring that into balance?
Sleep hygiene is something many of us talk about, but I think that it's how we practice it. It's making sure that our bedroom, and as we getting ready to rest for the evening, there aren't the bright lights, there aren't, the television buzzing and the light that actually impacts our ability to rest and go to sleep. Also, similarly, not doing your supermarketing or your shopping late at night, that can actually help you sleep better because you're not in these bright lights that again activate your brain in a way that makes you not want to rest. Similarly, how we eat, when we drink coffee, what time of day we drink coffee, what we eat for dinner, timing of dinner. So, eating several hours before you're going to sleep, not relying on or leaning on a glass of red wine to help you sleep, because if you're doing that, it could impact your sleep architecture. So, these things become important. Also, a habit that I try to teach my patients is, when you settling down for the evening, put your phone, check your messages and then leave it to charge in another room. So don't keep it buzzing by your bedside because you'll get every news notification and text from a friend who's overseas and in a different time zone. And it distracts you. It gets you up, it disrupts your sleep pattern. So those are just a few things to help.
Do you think it's also helpful? This ties to one of the things you mentioned earlier, but exercise and getting outdoors in the morning. Do you think that's helpful with the circadian rhythm? So there's a big contrast: dark at night, bright in the day.
Bright, exactly. So brightness in the day, getting in the sort of help with our circadian rhythm. Then, exercise, keeping active, doing something during the day that gets you out and about, moving your body, and then, calming the body down for rest at night. So often I will encourage people to exercise early in the day for that reason. Now, some people prefer to exercise, say, after work, but then they're energized. So unless they an individual who sleeps late and wakes up at a later time, but still gets in those hours of sleep, that could work. Everyone is different, but sometimes that level of energy, it's hard to then settle down your body after exercise at night.
Is it true that rates of depression tend to go up in the winter for people who live in climates that are cold and have shorter days in the winter? If so, why is that and what can we do about it for those of us living in places like that?
Correct. So seasonal affective disorders is actually a recognized condition. It's related to the amount of light that one is exposed to, cooler climates. And I actually, I see it. And that's why people use interventions like a light therapy box and things like that. Another thing that gets affected when you live in a climate like that is maybe your vitamin D level. So maybe just making sure your doctor checks that level. It could be an easy thing to supplement as well. So that type of condition could really mimic severe depression in certain times of the year in certain parts of the world. Something to definitely pay attention to and get help with. It's very real. It's not something that's just an enigma. It's actually a real condition that people suffer with.
And I just want to highlight the two things you said, the light therapy box and the vitamin D. So light therapy box, this is a certain type of light spectrum that you would get exposed to primarily in the morning where you just put it on your body, or how does that
So,
work?
there are several different therapeutic light boxes. And I think my best guidance on this would be to speak to a clinician who can help guide you to the right one. Because honestly, you can Google this on the internet and maybe get the wrong information for what you need.
Because there's a lot of people selling you a lot of things.
Correct. A lot of people selling a lot of things. But the other thing about light is that if you have a mental health condition, and this is a subtlety I want people to be aware of, you may have bipolar disorder and you may be feeling depressed, right? Because this is a phase of bipolar disorder. There's depression and there's mania. And you could say, well, I'm not feeling good. I Google it and I'm getting a light box. It could throw you into mania. So I want, in fact, when climates change, the opposite of what we just spoke about, Ocean, as we're getting into the light changes and brighter light, people can actually present with episodes of mania. So it's more complex than we initially see, and that's why I want people to get the right information.
Right, right. And then vitamin D, which obviously we tend to get more sun exposure in the summer than the winter, which is going to increase our vitamin D levels typically.
Yes.
And we also see that people tend to get colds when it's
Right.
cold.
Yes.
Right? Our immune systems tend to be more depressed in the winter. This could be connected, right?
This could all be connected. The immune system, about 70% of our immune system is in our gut. And so food becomes important. All these vitamins become so important. Things like zinc become really important to offset some of those coughs and colds and things like that. And you can get that through a supplement or through food. But all really to say that we want the strongest immunity. And here's a great tip, things like red bell peppers and kiwi fruit have some of the highest levels of vitamin C.
Right.
So, get it from your citrus fruit and things like that, but get it from all of these other plant fruits.
Most people don't know there's actually more C in peppers than there is in oranges.
That's correct. It's more vitamin C in red bell peppers, especially than oranges. So have both.
Any other nutrients that you think we need to pay attention to?
I like the healthy fats from omega-3s, and some of my favorite plant-based sources are chia seeds, flax seeds, walnuts, sea algae. These are actually nutritious, and if you want to supplement, there's an algal oil supplement that's easily available if you prefer that.
Anything else we haven't covered today that you think is important?
So, one of the things I've been thinking a lot about, Ocean, is that a lot of times people don't realize they have anxiety because they experience a physical symptom. It might be stomach aches, it could be headaches, it could be feeling unsteady on their feet, scared, stressed. But often, if you have a conversation with a clinician, we can uncover that there may be a core, it may be related to something that's happening. It may not have a connection. It may just be something you're going through. But sometimes I think it can be misdiagnosed or overlooked because someone is otherwise functioning but may actually have severe anxiety. So just remember that if it's a symptom that doesn't seem like it's mental health initially, it could be related because our mental health doesn't belong just above the head. It's our whole body, and it could present in different parts, but still be related.
What you're saying actually brings up one more question I want to ask you about, which is the role of trauma in mental health. And what are the proven resources, including but not just limited to diet, that can help somebody to resolve trauma? Because I think a lot of people, even they become aware that they have PTSD. Like I hear a door slam and my whole body goes into terror, but they don't know what to do about it. And just becoming aware of it, it's nice to know that that's why that's happening. But what do you actually do to help bring some peace and to actually find another experience of life?
I do believe that therapy, psychotherapy, and working with a trained therapist and using different techniques that they can teach you and help you in terms of the trauma that you've experienced becomes really important. But I also am really liking things in the digital therapeutics arena, things like virtual reality, the apps or the programs that actually allow for you to have an experience that is very contained and helps you feel calmer, de-stress, and takes you out of that traumatic moment or experience, can be super helpful.
And do you find that diet and lifestyle can be helpful to regulating the nervous system and, especially food, since that's what we're talking about here? Is all the things that we've talked about today, are those helpful in trauma resolution?
Trauma is extremely complex, and food can definitely help because food definitely can target fending off inflammation, which is one of the mechanisms. But it's not the only thing. It's a much more complex condition. I've certainly found diet to be very powerful with my patients, but they also need other forms of treatment, connections, sense of community, a healer, a therapist who's working with them, even a life coach. So all of these things become really important because, again, it comes back to that holistic and integrated approach.
Maybe we could wrap today with you kind of completing this sentence. If your brain is struggling, what I want you to know is...
If your brain is struggling, what I want you to know that you have the power at the end of your fork, that you have the power to make a healthy choice that can actually help heal your brain over time.
Thank you.
Thank you.
We've been talking with Dr. Uma Naidoo, a best-selling author, a researcher, and one of the world's leading experts on how we can leverage the power of food and lifestyle to heal our brains, to feel better, to live longer, and to be our best selves. Uma, your work is so inspirational, and it's giving hope and health to millions. And on behalf of myself and all of our audience in the Food Revolution Network and all the lives that you are touching, I thank you for your visionary leadership and for your partnership in the food revolution.
Thank you so much, Oceans. This was lovely to talk with you.